All right, boys and girls, mums and dads, here we go. Santa Papa John's got another story just for you guys. This is so awesome, and I hope you enjoy. I hope you got a fresh cup of hot cocoa, and I hope you've got some cookies. The night Santa lost his boots. Oh no! It was Christmas Eve, and the North Pole buzzed with excitement. Elves scurried about the workshop, checking lists twice and loading the sleigh with presents wrapped in paper that shimmered like freshly fallen snow. Reindeer pranced in their stalls, bells jingled on their harnesses. The air smelled of peppermint and pine, and the aurora borealis painted the sky in swirls of green and purple. Everything was going exactly according to plan, everything that is, except for one very important detail. Has anybody seen my boots? Santa called out, his voice echoing through the grand hallways of his workshop. Mrs. Claus looked up from the hot cocoa she was preparing, adding extra marshmallows the way Santa liked them. Your boots, dear, aren't they by the fireplace where you always leave them? Santa shook his head, his white beard swishing back and forth like snow falling from a pine branch. I thought so too, but they're not there. I've checked everywhere. The elves stopped their work immediately. Jingle Bell, the head elf, dropped his clipboard with a clatter that echoed through the suddenly silent workshop. Not your magic boots, Santa. We can't deliver presents without them. You see, Santa's boots weren't just any ordinary boots. They were special, magical, even they had been crafted centuries ago by the very first elves at the North Pole, using leather from the softest clouds and thread spun from moonbeams. They kept his feet warm in the coldest blizzards, helped him land softly and silently on rooftops without making even the slightest creak. And most importantly, they never left footprints in the snow or soot. Without them, Santa couldn't sneak in and out of houses undetected. Children might wake up. Christmas magic might be revealed, and the whole wonderful mystery of Christmas Eve would be ruined. When did you last see them? Asked Tinsel, a small elf with particular pointed ears and a talent for finding lost things. Santa stroked his beard thoughtfully, his brow furrowing with concern. Well, let me think. I wore them yesterday when I was testing the sleigh with Rudolph and the team. We flew over the Arctic Circle to make sure everything was working properly. Then I came inside, had some cookies. Mrs. Claus made those delicious gingerbread cookie ones. Read letters from children, checked the nice list one more time, and oh dear, I can't quite remember what happened after that. Mrs. Claus put down her cocoa pot with a gentle clink. Nicholas, you've been working so hard this year, perhaps you sat them down somewhere unusual. You know how you get when you're busy. A thorough search began immediately. Elves looked under every workbench in the toy workshop, checking behind rocking horses and beneath dollhouses. They searched the wrapping station where colorful paper and ribbons were stored in neat rolls. They checked the reindeer stable, looking in every stall and even asking the reindeer themselves if they had seen the boots. They searched the toy room, the control center where the naughty and nice list was kept, and even the ice cave where they stored extra candy canes and frozen treats. Mrs. Claus searched the kitchen, checking behind flour sacks and sugar bins. She looked in the library, scanning beneath reading chairs and behind towering bookshelves filled with Christmas stories from around the world. She even checked Santa's reading nook, his favorite spot by the window. But the boots were nowhere to be found. Oh no. As the clock ticked closer to departure time, the sky began to darken. Santa grew worried. The stars were beginning to appear, which meant children would soon be heading to bed. He sat down heavily in his favorite red velvet chair, letting out a loud sigh that made his beard flutter. And that's when young Pip, the smallest elf in the workshop, barely 3 feet tall, with eyes as bright as Christmas lights, tugged on his sleeve. Santa, Pip said, maybe there's somewhere you felt really happy yesterday. Santa looked down at the little elf with curiosity. What do you mean, Pip? Well, Pip explained, shuffling his tiny boots, my mama says that when we lose something, we should think about what we were feeling when we last had it. Happy thoughts help us remember. She says our happiest moments stick in our memory, and if we remember how we felt, we can remember where we were. Santa's eyes began to twinkle like stars reflecting off fresh snow. You know, Pip, that's very wise advice. Your mama is a smart elf. He closed his eyes and thought back to the day before. He remembered the cold wind during the test flight. His boots kept him perfectly warm even when they flew through a snow cloud. He remembered coming inside and stomping snow off them by the door, watching the snowflakes melt into little puddles. He remembered walking through the workshop, waving to elves as they worked. He remembered settling down with a stack of letters and the children's letters, Santa exclaimed, jumping up so quickly that Pip tumbled backwards and had to be caught by Jingle Bell. I was reading letters from children, and there was one particular letter that made me so happy I had to share it with everybody. I remember now. He hurried to the great hall where all the children's letters were sorted and read. The room was enormous, with vaulted ceilings covered in icicles that sparkled like diamonds. Letters were stacked on tables and hanging from strings like paper snowflakes, organized by country and by region. Some were written in crayon, some in careful pencil, and some were decorated with stickers and drawings. At the center of the room stood a special reading chair carved from ancient wood and cushioned with red velvet, where Santa sat to read the most touching letters aloud to the elves. And there, tucked beside the chair, particularly hidden by a pile of letters from Australia, were his boots. But how did they get there? Asked Jingle Bell, scratching his head in confusion. Santa laughed, a deep ho, 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 that made the letters flutter on the strings and brought smiles to everyone's face in the room. I remember now I was reading a letter from a little girl named Emma. She didn't ask for toys or games or anything for herself at all. Instead, she wrote that her Christmas wish was for her elderly neighbor, Mr. Jenkins was not feel lonely on Christmas. She noticed that he sat by his window looking sad, and she wanted to give him a new coloring book so that they could color together and he wouldn't be alone. Mrs. Claus pressed her hand to her heart, her eyes misting with tears. That's beautiful, Nicholas. It was so moving, Santa continued, his voice thick with emotion, that I kicked off my boots right then and there so I could run faster and tell you all about it. I wanted to make sure we added some extra special gifts for both Emma and Mr. Jenkins. In my excitement, I completely forgot about my boots. They've been here the whole time, waiting for me to come back. The elves cheered, their voice ringing through the great hall like a chorus of bells. Pip beamed with pride, his cheeks glowed red. Santa quickly pulled on his boots. They fit perfectly, as all was molding to his feet like a warm hug. Laced them up tight with their magical golden laces. Wait, Tinsel said, always curious. What happened with Emma and Mr. Jenkins? What did you decide to bring them? Santa's eyes twinkled even brighter than before. He tapped the side of his nose knowingly. Why? I made sure Emma got a deluxe art set with twice as many colors as she asked for, perfect for sharing with her friend. And I'm bringing Mr. Jenkins a beautifully hand-carved chess set. Emma mentioned in her letter that he used to love chess before his wife passed away and that he had no one to play with anymore. But more than that, I sent a little bit of Christmas magic their way so Emma's parents would think of inviting Mr. Jenkins for Christmas dinner. Sometimes people need a little nudge to do kind things they were already thinking about. That's the true spirit of Christmas, Mrs. Claus said, kissing Santa on the cheek and straightening his hat. With his boots securely to his feet, Santa climbed into the sleigh. The reindeer were ready, pawing at the ground with anticipation, their breath creating small clouds in the cold air. Rudolph's nose glowed bright red, ready to light the way. The bag of presents were secured in the back, impossibly full, yet somehow holding every single gift. The northern lights danced overhead in ribbons of green and gold, as if nature itself was celebrating the magic about to unfold. Ready, team, Santa called out, gathering the reins in his gloved hands. Ready, shouted in all the elves in unison, waving their hats and scarves. On Dasher, on Dancer, on Prancer, on Vixen, on Cupid, on Comet, on Donner and Blitzen, and Rudolph led the way through the starry night. The reindeer leaped into the sky, pulling the sleigh up, up, up into the starry night. The bells on their harnesses created a melody that only believers could hear. Santa looked back once at the North Pole, all lit up like a snow globe come to life, with elves waving goodbye and Mrs. Claus blowing kisses. And then he focused on the journey ahead. He had millions of children to visit, and thanks to little Pip's wisdom, he had on his magical boots to help him do it. Throughout the night, Santa delivered presents to children all around the world. He visited houses in bustling cities and quiet villages, apartments in tall buildings, and cottages by the sea. His boots worked perfectly, keeping his feet warm whether he was on a rooftop in Alaska or climbing down a chimney in Australia's summer heat, helping him land softly without disturbing a sleeping child, leaving no trace of his visits except the gifts under the tree. And the joy would come too in the morning. But every so often, as he slid down chimneys and filled stockings, arranged presents just so, and took bites of cookies left out for him, he thought about Emma's letter and smiled. When he reached Emma's house, he placed the art set under the tree with extra care, adding a special note thanking her for her kind heart. At Mr. Jenkins' house next door, he left the chess set, along with a note suggesting Emma might like to learn the game, and perhaps Mr. Jenkins would enjoy teaching her. And he sprinkled a little extra Christmas magic, the kind that warms hearts and brings people together, the invisible kind that makes people think of each other with love. As dawn began to break and Santa had set it home, and the sky turned pink and orange, Pip's words echoed in his mind. Happy thoughts help us remember. The little elf had been right. It wasn't just happiness that helped him find his boots. It was remembering what truly mattered, what made his heart fullest. When Santa finally returned to the North Pole, the sun was just peeking over the horizon. Mrs. Claus was waiting with hot cocoa and fresh cookies, warm from the oven. The elves gathered around to hear stories of his deliveries, asking about children in different countries and whether the reindeer had behaved themselves. You know, Santa said, pulling off his boots and setting them carefully by the fireplace this time, right where they belong. I may have lost my boots today, but I found something far more valuable. What's that? Asked Pip, his eyes wide with wonder. A reminder, Santa said, his voice gentle but firm, of why we do this. It's not just about the presents or flying or even the magic. Though these things are wonderful, it's about the kindness in children's hearts. Like Emma's, it's about bringing joy and connection to people who need it, about reminding people they're not alone in this world. That's the real magic of Christmas. That's what these boots help me do. Not just walk silently, but walk in service of love and kindness. All the elves nodded, and even the reindeer, peeking in through the reindeer with snow on their antlers, seemed to understand. Mrs. Claus wiped away a happy tear. From that night on, Santa made a new tradition. Every Christmas Eve before leaving, he would read one special letter aloud, a letter that reminded everyone of Christmas's true meaning, and he always double checked that his boots were by the fireplace before bed. One but more importantly, he made sure to remember the feeling of those special letters gave him, because as little Pip had taught him, happy thoughts don't just help us remember when we leave things, lose things, they help us to remember who they are and why we're here. The moral of the story is sometimes in our busy lives, we lose track of important things, not just objects like boots, but also the reasons why we do what we do. Santa's missing boots reminded him of something precious, that the greatest gifts aren't the ones wrapped in paper and bows, but the acts of kindness and love we share with others. Just like young Emma, who thought of her lonely neighbor before herself, we all have the power to make someone else's life a little more brighter. The true magic of Christmas and of any day lives in our heart. But remember, when we think of others, we share what we have and we spread joy wherever we go. When we feel lost or overwhelmed, sometimes the answer lies in remembering what makes us happiest, connecting with others, and making the world a kinder place, one small act at a time. And just like little Pip taught Santa, our happiest memories can guide us back to what matters the most. The boots were important, but the love and happiness that they helped Santa deliver was the real reason all along. Holy moly! What an amazing story, boys and girls. I hope you enjoyed. Mums and dads, I hope you enjoyed as well. Santa will be back with another story shortly, so hold tight.